Hello everyone, good evening. It's Courtney Klemm from Innertwine Herbs. We're gonna go on a little forage hike today. It's me and my girl Kalik over here. We're gonna check out some cool edible medicinal plants you can find this time during spring. I am here in Lake County, Illinois. We're gonna be at just a forest preserve or two, not a typical place I would harvest plants. Most of the time you're not allowed to. But I did find a couple places where I could see multiple herbs and whatnot, so they're easy to look for forage. We'll talk about a little bit about the medicinal uses, how you can cook them, and keep in mind all the guidelines we went over earlier for ethical foraging techniques and how to use medicinal and edible plants. First off, we just got here, and I wanted to stop and show you a couple things I found. One of them I don't really use medicinally, although it might have historical uses that I haven't quite researched, but it's Trillium. You can find it wild in Illinois in the woodlands. Pretty easy to tell by the 3 petals, and has a beautiful single flower coming from each plant. You will see later on in the season. One of those flowers I always think of Illinois or Oregon when I tend to see it in the woods. And right next door we have a small Monarda plant, or bee balm, which is a medicinal plant. You can eat the leaves, you can eat the flowers. I like to make tinctures and teas with them. Smells like oregano, so you can use them exactly like oregano in cooking, as well as it has the same medicinal qualities as oregano. So I love to use it when I have like an itchy throat and throat spray. Just as a nice tea. You can just chew on it a little raw. It is in the mint family. One of the ways you can tell is just by giving it a little sniff, You can smell such a potent flavor of oregano. It's delightful. I usually harvest them around midsummer when they're in flower. I like to dry the flowers with the leaves, but it's a good one to check out around here. It grows wild in Illinois. And if you end up not growing oregano in your garden, it's a great substitute. That's super beautiful. It's great to grow, and they call it bee balm because the bees just love this plant. So it's one you can grow yourself, harvest possibly in places around you, and it also welcomes other pollinators to the ecosystem. It's just a great overall plant. I wish I could show you the flowers maybe later in the summertime, but we'll start off our little forage with Trillium, and we got bee balm right here. And Khalid's eating some grass. Alrighty, here we go. Let's keep going on our walk. Alrighty, so our first spring edible plant came across is a nice specimen of garlic mustard. Scientific name Alaria petiolata. On this one, it's got some little flower buds. It's about to start going to flower. You can see a couple little other individuals coming up. So garlic mustard is kind of like a weedy plant around here. So it's actually one that is a great bioregional plant to pick. You can't really pick too much. Some yards it takes over. It's kind of a mild flavor plant, so it's not one of my favorite to use. But if you want to add a little garlic, spring green to salads and foods this time of year, you really can't harvest too much of it. If anything, you want to harvest this instead of a ramps or another sort of spring edible. This is actually the perfect time to pick it, right before it actually goes to flower, but there's some flower buds there. You can kind of see it's coming up right there. It's got some hairy stems. Alternate leaves, almost in a heart shape with almost rounded teeth along the edge. There's the front and back of it. And usually when you harvest it, you can just pop off. There's kind of what the stem looks like. So going with our different types of identifying characteristics, smell is a big one for garlic mustard. It is mild, but you do get that nice garlicky scent. Click! Okay, baby. And when you forage it, you kind of leave it pick like this. But if it is taking over your property, just dig up the whole thing, to be honest. Because it is kind of an invasive plant. But here's some nice stems, leaves. And I usually just eat the leaves, most of the time raw. And not as a main course, but as a little side dish. Has a nice mild garlicky flavor. And then, you know, going along with our foraging rules, if you are 100% sure this is garlic mustard, you can take a little taste of it. Usually you do the chew and spit, and I can't really, not on video, so I'm chewing up. They're brassica family, so it has that nice brassica, almost like a mustardy flavor, and then hints of garlic. Actually pretty yummy. That's good. A little bit later in the season, it has white flowers coming up in 4. Yeah, but that is garlic mustard. Not one of my favorites, but a great weedy green. It's great to forage. You want to pick this over other, you know, threatened or endangered species. Really delightful. Right, Kalik? Anyway, there we go. Mustard green. Got some mustard greens over here. And then also, not time yet, but over here we got a sumac. You can see the red sumac berries. That's when you harvest later after the summertime. And sumac, you know, has that lemony flavor. Make sure not to mix it with poison sumac, which has white berries. You can kind of see the tops. That is sumac over there, where you find sumac spice. You can make a nice, you know, homestead type lemonade with that without lemon. So that's another little edible we'll go over later in the season, hopefully. All right, let's keep going. Alrighty, so next edible spring plant and medicinal. Of course, our favorite dandelion. Dandelion, to many people, is a weed, but it's actually one of my favorite nourishing, gentle detoxing tonics. And it's a food herb, so it's great to eat, you know, every day, unless you're kind of too dry of a constitution. It's nice as a tea. Great, the leaves are great. They're not too bitter in the springtime, whereas later in the summer they start to get a little bit bitter. But it's a great thing to add, you know, nibble on it raw as a nice bitter tonic to stimulate digestion. Super high in vitamins and minerals. It's a great green to add to your diet. You know, the more you cook it, the bitterness tends to go away. So, you know, early springtime greens, you know, are pretty delicious. They're not very bitter at all. I do save the root, which I harvest later in the fall. Right now, the plant's energy is going out to the leaves, so that's where you're going to find the most medicinal value. Let's see, dandelion, Taraxacum officinale. We got a little flower head popping out. In some fields and pastures around here now, they are in flower, but since we're kind of in the woodland, it's not quite time yet. But it's another one. Let me just open up my knife. That I kind of would just, you know, if I want to come back for the roots, I just, you know, would harvest just leaves like this, wash them, keep them in the fridge, add them to stir fries and stuff like that. Even a tiny bit raw in a salad, but I do enjoy them more cooked. They come out of a center spot in the ground. When you do chop the leaves, you get that milky white latex, and that's a sign. It's not the only sign dandelion. There are other lookalikes that have a white latex. But there you go. You can kind of see it has a flat and then a cornered thing on the stalk. Kind of like arrowhead type leaf margins. Sometimes you'll see a lot of purple in the middle. But you definitely want to, if you can't tell dandelion, you want to wait till it's in flower, because there are lookalikes. And it does take a little bit of practice, but once you get it down, dandelion is pretty easy. See, you can always do a little chew and spit test, and initially I get that bitterness. That's good though. But whenever you do a chew and spit, you want to chew it for about 10 seconds or so, 10 to 30, just to get that flavor. And if you don't know what it is, you want to make sure you spit it out. But yeah, it's good, dandelion. I love to make a dandelion wine out of the flowers, which I'm hopefully harvesting later in the week. But the leaves are a great spring tonic, gentle liver detoxifier. It doesn't leach potassium or anything out of your body when you use it. So it's a nice, gentle, safe diuretic that you can use every day. You know, a lot of people go for those heavy liver detoxes, but all you really need is to add more green nutrition, simple, safe herbs that are nice and cleansing. So dandelion is a great cleansing spring tonic. It's also weedy, so you can't really harvest too much of it. I dry the leaves for tea. It's just a great overall, you know, everyone overlooks dandelion, but it's so medicinally powerful and gentle and safe. You can't really go on wrong with too much dandelion. So there we go. Kind of butchered up this plant, but there's our little dandelion about to go into flower. Just make sure you double check your field guides if you're not sure what a dandelion looks like, because you do find ones that are, you know, thicker, broader leaves. This one's kind of small and scraggly. It just depends on the environment it's growing on, probably how nutritious the plant is. But dandelion's a great one to add to your springtime diet, your daily, you know, cleansing medicinal herb. It's an overall great plant to add to our diet, dandelion. All right, so one of the favorites of springtime is ramps. I found a nice patch here. We got a nice patch of bloodroot, medicinal herb. I don't really use. It can be pretty intense, so I think it's mostly used for professional herbalism or more Native American traditional uses. But it's kind of cool to see. It's got some beautiful white flowers. But ramps over here is a pretty easy medicinal one to find, or not medicinal, edible one to find, although there is some lookalikes like Lily of the Valley, which isn't deadly, but it does have some toxic alkaloids in it. So you do want to make sure you know you're harvesting ramps before you do. And ramps aren't threatened or endangered in Illinois, but they are, you know, since they're one of those springtime magical foraging finds. You know, some people tend to over harvest it, so you want to be very mindful of where you find it, how much you take it home, plant it if you have a shady woodland on your property. So I recommend only foraging for personal use and only a little bit if you want to try it. You know, it's one of those, you know, it takes a long time for a plot to get this big, and if people just come out and keep getting all of it, there won't be left for anyone else. So definitely one, when you know it, it's easy to find, but just be wary. There are lookalikes, so just keep an eye on that, and then just, you know, make sure to be mindful of your harvesting. I'm, you know, only dug up these two for now just to kind of show you what they look like. But yeah, Allium trichogum is ramps, or wild leek, wild onion. And one of the ways you can tell is by its bulb. You know, it has an onion bulb. So I never cut it off at the top, unless I know Lily of the Valley is in flowering. But I try to grab the whole bulb. I mean, once you're experienced enough, you can just cut it off to keep the bulb growing for future for the plant system. But in the beginning, you want, you know, an identifying characteristic is the bulb, whereas Lily of the Valley has more of like a little rhizome going on. And ramps, you can have white stems, or reddish is more common, but I tend to find more white. The leaves, you know, Lily of the Valley, their leaves kind of curl out, and usually there's 3 or more, whereas ramps tends to have 2. I think I have seen 3 before. But you want to use all your senses: smell, taste, touch, vision, everything to identify. It has a little sheath over the top, and if you do break it, you have such a lovely smell of garlic and onion. So that, you know, if you smell Lily of the Valley, you're not going to get any of that. And you can do a small taste test. Lily of the Valley, you know, you don't want to ingest, but if you want, you know, if you want to you could do a spit and chew test to see if it tastes like garlic or not. But even just the smell, ooh, smells so good. Usually you find them in dense clusters like this. You can nibble on them raw, but they are great just sauteed as a springtime herb to add to your stir fries, along with your garlic mustard and whatnot. But you know, you can just grow your own onions or chives, get some garlic mustard. There are other ways that you can increase, you know, the onion garlic flavor in your diet without having to harvest too many ramps. If they were really common, I would say go for it, but as of now, just be mindful of harvesting it. It's such a beautiful plant and so delicious. I think I, planted about 5 or 10 last season in a little plot, and try and keep them going. So when you do forage, just be grateful and thankful for what you get, and try to help out the ecosystem, replant, repopulate, use other herbs when possible. Yeah, so this is a nice little patch of wild ramps, and you really only see them in the springtime. Otherwise, you'll see a nice onion flower later in the next month or so coming up. So it's a good one. A great spring wild edible. Yeah. There we go. All right, so next plant, medicinal catnip, Nepeta cataria. Not really a spring edible, but a medicinal plant I love to use. I do find it quite an abundance around here in Lake County. And it's a traditional mint family, square stem, opposite leaves, and almost a furry velvet-like consistency on the leaves. It has a very almost florally soothing scent. Kind of rounded, little bit pointed leaf margins. And this is, the traditional catnip that your local felines are going to go crazy for with the scent. It's also, I think it's nepetalactone is the compound that's actually one of the strongest anti-mosquito repellent compounds. So I like to use catnip hydrosols and essential oils to repel insects during the summertime. But not only is it useful for cats, but for humans as well. It's a really great calming herb, helps you go to bed at night. I wouldn't say sedative, but it's kind of releases stress and calms your mind before bedtime. So I like to add that to different tea blends and sometimes tinctures to restore the mind and exhaustion. So that's a great medicinal herb to use, and I find it in the wild around here all the time, and it is one of my favorites to kind of find and pick along the way. Yeah, there we go. Catnip. Just stumbled upon some nice patches of stinging nettle. Usually you find a patch, there's bound to be more because it spreads quite easily. But you can never have too many nettles, so hey, and here's a nice little patch over here. These are quite small still. Usually I've seen nettles get up to 2-3 feet mid-summertime. You can usually come and harvest once, twice, 3 times throughout the year before it goes to flower and seed. After that, the medicinal kind of edible values kind of change throughout its growing life, but this is like a perfect time to harvest it. So stinging nettle, Urtica dioica. Beware, it does have those little stinging hairs. They're actually trichomes, little hollow needles filled with organic acids and histamine and other kind of compounds which create that stinging sensation. If you are a beginner, it is a good thing to wear gloves. I'm kind of used to the stings. I kind of like them a little bit. And in a way, I've harvested so much, they just don't really bother me that much anymore. So stinging nettle, yeah, super high in green nutrition, minerals like calcium, iron, potassium. Has great gentle detoxing cleansing effects for the kidney and liver. It's a safe herb to take every day. You can eat it, have it as a tea. It is a little bit drying, so if you have a drying constitution, kind of like dandelion, you might not want to have it in excess or every single day. But it's a safe, high nutritional plant for pregnant women. Just great to, put in your daily diet, especially when you find it fresh in the springtime. When harvesting, I do just pick kind of the bottom of the plant and leave the roots so more growth keeps happening. Once you dry, process, or cook, stinging nettle, the trichomes do dissipate, so you don't get that stinging sensation. Not one I suggest eating raw, but it's a super, so exciting, a great plant. Has kind of square stems. It has these little notches that kind of run up the stem, if you see it. See those little trichomes? And that's a good way to tell that it's stinging nettle, besides the hairs, but those little notches that run up. Has opposite leaves. There is a look-alike you can find, wood nettle. Wood nettle does have little stingers, but it has alternate leaves. And to me, it does look different. Stinging nettle has these sharp, pointy leaf margins, kind of heart-shaped leaves. I find that wood nettle has more broader leaves, and it just looks a little bit different. I haven't found any right here at the moment, but yeah, opposite leaves, stinging nettle. It goes into flower, I want to say around June, end of June, and you can tell the difference in flower from wood nettle as well. Wood nettle is edible, but it doesn't have the great medicinal properties of stinging nettle. So what I usually do is I'll take, a couple clusters. Usually I dry them. You can keep them in the fridge and just add them to your sautés or soups. It's great just to add some nutritional value to your food every day, especially in the springtime. Flavor, just, not too intense of a flavor. It's kind of just like a green tea, herbal tea flavor. It's really great. Yeah, so stinging nettle. There you go. Just be careful when you harvest it. I don't really recommend planting it in your garden unless you have a container or maybe a plot in the woods that you don't want to walk through during the summertime, because they will take over and they do get very abundant. But if you something that you want to use every day or harvest large quantities of, you could possibly plant that in your own yard. But yeah, stinging nettle, such a beautiful plant. Might harvest a little bit, and then come back, a couple more weeks, get some more. Yeah, stinging nettle. Here I found some little blue violets. Not the biggest specimens, but we can still kind of go over identifying them. They are native to this area. This is the common blue violet, Viola sororia. Great edible, medicinal. I've seen some plants that you can find really dense clusters of these on the forest floor, but these ones are kind of small. I'm going to go ahead and just pick one, just to take a look at it. So the leaves and flowers are edible. Trying to get a good. It's got 5-petal purple flowers. There's dozens of violet species, and not all of them are edible. We have the common blue violet there's the tricolor violet. There's 2 or 3 that are good edibles. Some of the other like pure white ones, pure yellow ones, I don't really eat, because some of them have this kind of a funky taste that just isn't not enjoyable to eat. Kind of leaves a weird sensation in the back of your mouth. But these ones are delicious and super high in antioxidants, those beautiful purple color. I like to just eat, I love the flowers just raw on salads. I dry them and put them in teas, but you could freeze them in ice cubes. Just, they're just beautiful just to add flowers onto your food. The leaves as well, I like to dry. You can eat raw in salads. There we go. They have a rounded tooth margin on the leaves. They're a little heart shape leaf. The roots are not edible, so don't eat the roots, but you can just pick these off, just eat them raw. They kind of have, as a medicinal quality, not only is it high nutrients and antioxidants, but the leaves have a nice mucilaginous quality. So it's great for sore throats. Tea is good for respiratory infections. Yeah, so it has a nice soothing, moistening quality to it, which is great. And it's a food herb, so you really can't overdo it. One of the key characteristics for identifying the flowers is, if I can get a better focus, but there's a little nodule on the back. Let me see if I can find another one. And all the violet species have that. It's like a little, there we go, a little nodule on the back. And that's how you can tell for sure it's a violet flower. I can't recall the actual name of the, there we go. But yeah, so you can I just pop off this whole thing and I just put the whole flower in my mouth. Doesn't really have much of a taste, but super delicious. Usually, same with nettle. If you find one, you tend to find a lot. This time of season, I kind of pop off the flowers, and I'll pick them this way. That one I already picked, but just take them like this. Usually, I wait till they're fully open, and then I just collect them like so. And later on, I'll harvest the leaves, dry them for teas. Yeah, but it's just kind of fun, going through and picking violet flowers. These ones are kind of small. It might just be the environment they're growing in, but yeah, violets. One of my absolute favorites just to eat in the summertime. Delightful. Can't really have too much for violets. Yeah, great medicinal spring herb. Great edible just to add on your foods in the springtime. All right, so this is my final spring edible we found on the way out. This is Daylily Hemorrhoids vulva. A nice springtime edible. You can also eat it throughout the summer. Every part of the plant is edible. The leaves, shoots, flowers, roots. I haven't had the roots in a while, but I prefer the leaves and I love the flowers. They come in big, dense clusters. Ways to identify it is the leaves come out in a fold-like manner. You can see these creases, they folded just right in half. To me, that's one of the key indicators. It has parallel lines heading all the way up the leaves. There is two lookalikes. Iris is one that could be mistaken for it, as well as daffodil. But once you kind of get the identifying characteristics down, to me they don't look anything alike. But the best way to do it, I don't have time today, would be to dig up the roots. The roots are all very different. Daylily has kind of tuber-like, so they're more like round little balls coming off the root systems, whereas Iris has more of a elongated rhizome, and daffodil doesn't have tuber-like structures at all. So yeah, the best way, let me open up my knife here. So this is, I would eat them a little bit earlier than this. You can still eat it, the leaves when it's this size. I just take back and cut just like that. And leave the base to keep growing. And you could just eat this whole portion. I like to cook them best. I don't know many people that eat them raw. And Daylily, there is a small percentage of people that do have bad gastric upsets from Daylily. So the best thing to do is maybe start with the flowers, or cook the leaves and just taste a little bit once cooked. It's always best with wild foods your first time. Same with wild mushrooms. Just to taste a little bit and just see how you're feeling within 20-30 minutes, and then you can go ahead and eat larger quantities.
It is rare, but there has been documentation of daylily just causing a mild gastric upset. Nothing terrible. But that's always a good thing with any wild plants. Yeah, so you just take these off, wash them really well, chop them up, stir fry them. You can eat later in the season. The flower buds before they open are nice stir fried, as well as the flowers I like to eat raw. They have beautiful orange flowers, almost tiger lily like looking. Yeah, so daily. The tubers you can cook up kind of like potatoes, boil them, saute them, bake them. But the greens are one of my favorite edibles in the springtime. Not many medicinal qualities, more of just a food herb. All right, you guys. Well, thank you for joining me on my little foraging adventure for a couple places through Lake County. Just the reminders, important foraging reminders, is to not pick or eat a plant unless you are 100% know what it is. Always check out, identify a plant at least 4 or 5 times before you ever want to try eating it or using it as medicine. Be mindful where you pick. Stay away from roadsides, train tracks, forest preserve, places that might be sprayed with pesticides or chemicals. As well, just be mindful with how much you pick. Try to leave some for other foragers and native birds and animal and other plant populations. And just be grateful for what abundance nature gives us and what you can find in the forest. Try and plant as many species of herbs and vegetables as you can. Try to grow native species that might be threatened or endangered. And just do a lot of research. Foraging is a lot of fun. You can learn a lot about plants and other animals when you're out in the woods and start using them for food and for medicine. Hopefully we'll do some more foraging in the springtime or in the fall. Well, thank you for joining me. Happy Earth Day, everyone. Have a good night.